Hello, and welcome to another Mattatuck moment. Our story today is about a con artist. Since the dawn of mankind, the confidence man has used deception to part unsuspecting victims from their hard-earned money. The handicraft of one 19th century scammer continues to deceive over 150 years after he first peddled his suspect goods. His specialty? Forged letters and documents. His name? Robert Spring, the first noteworthy forger in the United States. We'll begin in 1855, with Spring earning an honest living as a book peddler when he purchased a large lot of scrap paper from a Baltimore bank. As fate would have it, buried among those papers were letters and checks written by George Washington, and with them, opportunity. 3 years later, Spring had settled in Philadelphia as a dealer of rare books, prints, and documents signed by Washington and other famous figures. While his inventory of genuine Washington items dwindled, demand had not. Lacking supply, he decided to fill it by forging Washington's handwriting on payment orders, military passes, and other memorabilia to sell as genuine artifacts. Spring's forging techniques were simple and surprisingly effective. To copy a signature, he would place a pane of glass over the hole in a washstand, position the original document on the glass with a blank paper on top, and set a lantern under the washstand, making a setup similar to a modern lightbox. He then simply traced the handwriting. Eventually, he was able to pen Washington's signature from memory. To finish the process, he would apply black coffee to the new document in order to age the appearance of the paper. His next step was to identify a mark, an unsuspecting victim who would pay him for his handiwork. There was enormous interest in letters and documents signed by the country's founding fathers. There was plenty of potential prey. All one had to do was to lure them in and exploit their weaknesses. One such gentleman was industrialist Charles Benedict of Waterbury, treasurer of Benedict and Burnham Manufacturing, and executive for several of Waterbury's dominant brass works. He was elected mayor of Waterbury in 1860. He built a lavish Queen Anne-style mansion on the hill overlooking the city, arguably the most magnificent residence the city had ever seen. Benedict was smart, refined, respected, and nobody's fool. Well, almost. Importantly, he collected autographs. How Robert Spring first made contact with Benedict is lost to us, but a series of letters document a portion of their correspondence. These now reside in the archives of the Mattatuck Museum. In the earliest letter, from 1864, Spring informed Benedict of his financial troubles, stroked his ego, demonstrated his trust by sending him autographs on approval, and expressed urgency in completing his sale.
I thank you for your kind consideration. Never was I in a more embarrassed situation than I am at present. Since the war, my business has fallen off to little or nothing, and many things I hold most sacred I am compelled to part with. At your wish, I send you a few rare autographs. Although I have not the honor of an acquaintance, I am convinced I am communicating with a gentleman who can truly appreciate what I send. May I request your immediate attention? For this week I am urgently pressed for money, and what perhaps would be a trifle for you would be a little fortune to me. With great respect, my dear sir, yours truly, Robert Spring.
It appears that Benedict was lured in and swallowed the hook, and purchased an unknown number of the items that Spring offered for sale. The museum's archive contains 23 letters and documents signed by the individuals that Spring had listed in his letters. 2 of the manuscripts Benedict purchased have been determined to be unquestionable forgeries. One of Spring's most famous products was a payment order signed by Washington. He would change the payment amounts, dates, and recipient names, and sell the variants to unwitting collectors. The museum's forgery is one of these orders, made out to a General Samuel Smith for $380. A genuine George Washington signature has several characteristics that differentiate it from a Spring forgery. When Washington signed his name, he typically signed his first name G.O. with 2 dots below it. Spring often missed this subtle difference and only put 1 dot when producing his forgeries. Also, Washington tended to write the G in his first name leaning slightly to the right. Spring tended to write the G in a more vertical position. But the story doesn't end there. There are 2 additional letters addressed to Charles Benedict. 10 months after the last known correspondence between the forger and the industrialist, Benedict received a letter from Emma Harding of London. It was written on black-bordered mourning stationery. It was written in a different hand than Spring's, but the message was all too familiar.
My late husband collected rare books, manuscripts, autographs, etc. A pleasing mania with him, for he was a poor man. He invested every dollar at command in the purchase of what I have hitherto looked upon as worthless, but am told they are not. Left in great distress with 4 children in a foreign land, I am compelled to part with what my husband prized so greatly. A friend tells me you buy such relics. I hope so, for with this I send you a Dr. Franklin, a Walter Scott, and a printed Revolutionary relic. My husband valued his Franklin at $20. I will gladly sell the 3 for that amount.
What respectable man wouldn't want to help a desperate widow with 4 children who were down on their luck? A second letter reminded him that she had sent him the autographs and still hoped he would purchase them. Although we don't know if Benedict ever paid the poor woman, the Mattatuck Museum is the owner of a letter from Sir Walter Scott of undetermined authenticity and a Benjamin Franklin letter written to a Dr. de Normandy, dated November 25th, 1772, forged by Robert Spring. Another Franklin de Normandy letter resides at Yale's Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library. Its catalog description reads, "Forgery, Robert Spring." Poor Emma Harding was neither poor nor even a widow. The name was one of several known alter egos for Robert Spring. In 1869, Spring was arrested in Philadelphia on a charge of obtaining money by false and fraudulent pretenses by selling what purported to be autographed letters of Washington, Jefferson, Franklin, and other persons of eminence. At one point in the investigation, a detective escorted Spring to Independence Hall to examine a Washington letter on display there. Spring confirmed it, too, was one of his forgeries, so Benedict and the Mattatuck Museum are at least in good company. Among the many institutions that have uncovered Spring's forgeries are the American Antiquarian Society, the New York Public Library, even the Library of Congress. Perhaps hundreds of trusting marks have proudly, though unwittingly, passed down their forgeries to their descendants, who never once thought to question their authenticity. What's in your collection? Thank you for listening. Please join us for our next Mattatuck Moment.